Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the second event of VIU's Arts and Humanities Colloquium Series for Spring 2022, which is also today just one of many engagements staged as part of VIU's annual Global Citizens Week. Each year around this time, VIU hosts a variety of campus activities, visiting speakers, and classroom dialogues that explore issues of global development and social justice at home and abroad. This year's theme is Shining a Light on Justice, exploring meaningful ways we can achieve justice for all at home and abroad. We hope you find today's colloquium engaging and informative, and that your experience will encourage you to dig deeper, to think about your place in the world, and ultimately to help you grow as an active citizen. My name is Dr. Tim Lewis. I'm a professor in and chair of the Department of History here at VIU, and I also serve as the MC for the colloquium series. Please remember that this campus and the Nanaimo region as a whole is built on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. As guests on this land, we must always be grateful for the opportunity we have to live, learn, work, and play in this very special place, and do our best to advance the process of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. Hello to all those joining us via Zoom this morning, and just a reminder to ensure that your Zoom screen is on mute. Thank you. And as always, the members of the Arts and Humanities Colloquium Planning Committee, headed by VIU English professor, Dr. Theo Finnegan, I extend our sincere thanks to the Dean of Arts and Humanities, Dr. Marnie Stanley, for her ongoing support of the work of the colloquium. This series could not continue without the funding and moral support that her office provides. Now, as some might be aware, today's featured speakers, Professor Craig Taylor and Dr. Sonnet La Bay from VIU's Creative Writing Department, were not actually on our original Spring 2022 schedule. But they both enthusiastically stepped forward and helped us out when we had an unexpected cancellation. And we very much appreciate their help. And speaking of help, I seized on that concept as the inspiration for what's become my standard musical salute to Marnie for all the help she provides to the colloquium. So with great apologies to the Beatles, here's my variation on their classic Help. Help, we need somebody help, not just anybody help. So we turned to Marnie for help. When we were younger, so much younger than today, we needed colloquium help in such a desperate way. But now those days are gone, we're not so badly off. Now we find a peace of mind and have no need to scoff, 'cause money gives us all the things we need and grants us all the tools so we succeed, and lets us spread all our works and deeds. So we thank you, money, money, money. Thank you, thank you. That tells you just how good the Beatles were when you can take the palest and poorest imitation of their work and still get applause for it. So, wow, the Beatles were wonderful. Thank you very much. And good news for you. Unlike most occasions, I'm told that there is going to be more and most certainly better music coming your way, among other things, in our presentation. So look forward to that. And to help us get to that point, please welcome to the stage Professor Jay Rosetsky from VIU's Creative Writing Department, as he will tell us a bit more about our first presenter, Professor Craig Taylor, his colleague. Jay.
Thank you, Tim. I think you were in tune, but my ear isn't that good, so who could say, really? But I'd like to just begin by thanking the Colloquium Committee for the work that they do putting the series together, especially in the trying times that we are in. And also to again acknowledge the very storied traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw people, where we come together to think and learn and listen today. One of the ongoing, I have many ongoing irritations, but one of the ongoing irritations that I have is the sheer number of Spider-Man movies that Hollywood produces. I think really like that's the only story there is to tell. But I do like that adage that comes from the Spider-Man franchise, the adage that with great power comes great responsibility, and that you should use your powers for good. I think, in fact, that the adage comes from the sword of Damocles, like several thousand years before, but it's still an oldie and a goodie, right? And one of the great powers that writers have is the ability to express ideas well. A lot of people I know are sort of intimidated by the idea of expressing themselves. And I have some evidence for this, which is not very long ago. I mean, before the pandemic, the last time I crossed the border into the United States, I was confronted by, the US customs official. And after asking me what I did, and I told him, well, I teach writing at Vancouver Island University, he said, oh, well, I better be really careful with my grammar then, right? The guy with the Kevlar vest and the sidearm and all of the power and authority thought he should be careful with his grammar around me. The poet Lorna Crozier describes a visit to Chile in which she was told, "We are telling you this because you are sensitive people, because you are poets. We know you will take our stories back with you. You will put them into words." So the session today is called Listening to the World, Storying a Place. And that's sort of the theme. In their own way, poet and songwriter Sonnet La Bay and playwright and nonfiction writer Craig Taylor, both professors in the creative writing department, do the work of telling others stories, putting language to the challenges, political and personal, that people face in their day-to-day. So we'll hear first from Craig Taylor this morning. Craig is really good at talking to people and in capturing their voices in his work. So from some of his earlier work, Return to Aikenfield, 1 Million Tiny Plays About Britain, Londoners, and most recently, New Yorkers, a city and its people in our time, a book which has been positively reviewed in some little newspapers like The Guardian and the New York Times and the Irish Examiner, and so on, and which just this fall won Craig the Brooklyn Library Prize for nonfiction. For his book launch, Craig enticed a number of actors to read a few of the many wonderful stories in New Yorkers to add another layer to the giving of voice that is part of this project. And it was, for me, the very best use of Zoom I've seen in these last 2 years of the plague. So please welcome Professor Craig Taylor.
Thanks, Jay. There will be no singing in my presentation. I'm going to be discussing how stories are passed from storyteller to listener. Before I discuss oral history, I want to acknowledge that we are on the land of those who have their own vibrant oral tradition, and we are all the beneficiaries of the knowledge that has been passed down from generation to generation in this way. I wrote this talk on what is known as Protection Island, and I'm very grateful to be able to reflect on these subjects with you while standing on Snuneymuxw territory. I'm also very privileged to share this stage with Sonnet today, and I'm happy we will hear more singing as well as my speaking. Like most great stories, I'd like to begin in Estonia. In spring 2003, I flew to Tallinn, Estonia, to write an article. It was about the Canadian men's soccer team, who at that time didn't win many games. They were lost in the wilderness and somewhat forgotten by fans at home. They were scheduled to play a match against Estonia in a stadium outside Tallinn, atop a field covered in dead brown grass. I was interested in the story, but I was much more interested in Tallinn. It has a beautiful cobblestoned old city. I watched the game from the press area, which was really just a concrete enclave that sheltered us from the Baltic wind. There were maybe 3-4 Canadian fans in the audience, in the crowd, not a lot of international reporters. There was a man sitting on a folding chair near me wearing a very warm fur-lined coat. He was writing furiously in a little notebook, a student's exercise book, and he was writing with such force it looked like he was scratching his way through the book. Occasionally, he would look up and assess what was happening on the pitch. Estonia was winning. And then he'd hunch over his notebook again. At the end of the first half, he introduced himself as Artur. He put down his pen, smoked cigarettes, one after the next. Artur said in English that he was the sports section of the Tallinn newspaper. And I asked him, I thought he'd misspoken, are you part of the sports section? Are you a sports writer? He shook his head and said, I am the sports section. I am the sports writer. After the game, he had to drive to a volleyball tournament, professional, and then a ping pong tournament, amateur, and then a hockey game, professional. And as I had no plans, I met him that evening at the rink. Cigarette smoke hung over the ice. Even after independence, there were many Russians living in Tallinn, Artur said. And he pointed to the players' bench. Long Russian names stretched across the shoulders of the jerseys. Artur was in some ways good company, but he mostly filled his notebook with his scratchy handwriting. I was responsible for around 3,000 words on the Canadian team for my story, due, I think, in about a month and a half after the game. Artur had to write the entire sports section, 6,000 words every day. During one of his cigarette breaks, he said to me, I am so very tired. Estonians are both stoic and dramatic. When I left Estonia, I remember thinking, I'm glad that's not my life. Artur said he loved literature, poetry, even the Russian writers, a little bit of Tolstoy, Akhmatova, but he had no time to write. He was too busy writing. Poor Artur, I think, until I realized Artur's experience, his manic daily bouts of journalism, was becoming the norm. It was around this time I first heard the term journalism. Something was happening. Changes were afoot in my industry. This was not just the beginning of a precipitous slide for newspapers. This was the start of Facebook's charge to upend the ecosystem of news and lead us deeper into a world of misinformation. That was all to come. Back then, it just felt like we were all transforming to resemble Artur, caught in a cycle of where we skimmed only the most uppermost layer of froth from the world, working at a speed that produced so many words, but didn't allow us to write. I was living in London and I was writing a lot about the UK for the Guardian newspaper. Many of the British journalists wanted to be in LA or New York, and so I was often sent to places like Hull or Grimsby or Anglesey. I began to understand that my experiences with people, which were often deep and rich and strange, and the equally rich language they would use to describe their lives, was secondary now to a replicable story I could plug in again and again. Artur was becoming a verb, and I seemed to be Arturing my way through life. And then I got involved in a different form of writing. I've always loved oral history. I've always hated the words oral history. I always cringe when I hear the term, because oral historian sounds like someone interested in the history of dental tools, the invention of the periodontal scaler or the mouth mirror. Even if the names don't work, the form does. I met in London an editor I've ended up working with for nearly 20 years named Matt Weiland, who had once worked with one of my heroes, a writer named Studs Terkel. Look into oral history, Matt said. Studs' work can be found in books such as Hard Times, The Good War, and Working, his most famous book. It gave voice to 20th century America, crossing racial lines, gender lines, class lines, creating in his books a cacophony that read as a sort of literary democracy. So that, for instance, in his book Hard Times, Dust Bowl farmers got their say just after the words of one of FDR's policy advisors. Complexity grew in the books with the addition of each new voice, and these voices arrived from opposing viewpoints. They spoke in rich slang. They spoke the vernacular. Studs did not need to live in each individual world. His interviewees brought him the world. He and others made it look easy, like it was just, a few people talking one afternoon. The form led me to the work of Tony Parker, to Jean Stein, whose book Edie was very different to the work of Studs. Jean Stein used the life of Edie Sedgwick, who you might have heard of, who was a young woman affiliated with Andy Warhol, to examine class, to examine the art world, New York City, the 60s, all in vocal registers that ranged from the pinched moralism of the stuffiest New Englander to New York art scene posturing that bordered on nihilism. It was thrilling, all of them in one place. Edie herself was gone. She died in 1971. And so she remained a conspicuous silence at the center of this book. I thought of our tour while reading it. I liked the Russians too. Reading Edie, I saw an epic cast of characters, Tolstoy, but in their own voices. Voices. The form seemed so transferable. My next great love was Aikenfield. This is a book published in 1969 about the lives, the dreams of villagers in a little speck of a village in the Suffolk countryside in the UK. Its author, Ronald Blythe, heard poetry in the language of the village. Voices that were as rich as the clingy Suffolk soil. And he gave his interviews time to sit in silence, time to probe their feelings on mortality, their connection to this land which had passed through to them generation after generation. I loved the book so much, I wrote a sequel going back to the same village in 2004. And I hoped it would be, you know, in terms of a sequel, more Godfather 2 than Weekend at Bernie's 2. It was meant to be quality. There was time to do the work. Time seems to flow differently on the flat Suffolk landscape. Time was what someone like Artur didn't have in his writing life. It was what journalism would not allow for increasingly. Time to be amongst people so that you're looking at them. You're not hunched over your notebook, writing for your life. So from here, we go to Belarus, obviously. You never know where you're going to end up. I mean, I didn't end up there physically. I didn't go to Belarus, but I ended up reading about Belarus and about the Ukraine and about Russia because I sort of fell in love. Well, not in love, but that feeling I'm sure all of you have had at one point when you read a writer who changes what is possible in your own life project, who whispers to you, well, not actually whispers, but, you know, kind of whispers, here is how I have done it. Here is what is possible. For me, this was a writer named Svetlana Alexievich. And I felt that Svetlana Alexievich was for quite some time my very own writer. I read all of her books in translation. She's worked mostly in Belarus with periods of exile in Western Europe. She is currently living in political exile in Germany after protesting the contested elections in Belarus in 2020. Some people like Svetlana know at this moment what it's like to be denied freedom. We'll move on from that topic. Alexievich's books are choral, not oral, they're choral. They are strange and wonderful, one voice after the next. She seemed in her work to create a genre or a subgenre where a historical event was examined through different voices. She did this with Chernobyl in her book, Chernobyl Prayer. She spoke to young men returning from Afghanistan in her book, Boys in Zinc. And she wrote Secondhand Time, which was testimony, which was interviews, which was journalism, but was somehow elevated. Her interviews for this book spanned 1991 to 2012. The subject was Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. And the book was so alive in details, intimate in approach. I'll always remember reading this one section where Alexievich writes in parentheses, and both of us cry. She was there in the room with her interviewee, and both of us cry. There was room for that sort of thing in her books. There was no room for, and both of us cry, in the journalism I saw around me. Alexievich offered solutions for some of today's challenges. How do we represent those different from us in our work? Or is that impossible? Alexeyevich's work is not ventriloquism. She is not pretending to be someone. She is not appropriating a voice. I also admired the way she wrote about her work, her methodology, specifically how she placed herself in the room. What led to the moment, and both of us cry? Was this writing valid as journalism, as literature? Svetlana Alexievich elevated her profile in 2015 by going out and winning the Nobel Prize for Literature. For literature, that should be stressed. Literature is surely the realm of the prose writer or the poet or Bob Dylan, apparently. Those who stare down the empty page, not someone whose books resembled journalism, other people's words. Wasn't this just arrangement? Someone else's life, someone else's material? Was there artistry here? There was. And as I said before, the form has a kind of life that cannot be felt elsewhere. Fiction writers want its effects. Roberto Bolaño's The Savage Detectives is a work of oral history that just happens to be fiction. He wants to import into his work the feel of all of these voices clashing, speaking, pleading their case. Although I loved all Alexeyevich's work, I especially valued her first book, The Unwomanly Face of War, both for the writing, which described the experiences of women who fought in World War II, but also the way Alexeyevich approached the book. It served as a beacon of sorts. Any reader could sense her excitement at realizing these voices were ready to speak. An alternate history was about to be revealed. And that's when you know you're onto something. This is a quick selection from that book. If they suddenly begin to remember, they don't talk about the women's war, but about the men's. They tune into the canon, and only at home or waxing tearful among their combat girlfriends do they begin to talk about their war, the war unknown to me, not only to me, to all of us. More than once during my journalistic travels, I was the only hearer of totally new texts. I was shaken as I had been in childhood. The monstrous grin of the mysterious shows through these stories. When women speak, they have nothing or almost nothing of what we are used to reading and hearing about, how certain people heroically killed other people and won or lost, what equipment there was and which generals. Women's stories are different and about different things. Women's war has its own colors, its own smells, its own lighting, and its own range of feelings, its own words. There were no heroes and incredible feats. There are simply people who are busy doing inhumanly human things. And it is not only they who suffer, but the earth, the birds, the trees, all that lives on earth with us. They suffer without words, which is still more frightening. I want to write the history of that war, a women's history. After the first encounters, astonishment, these women's military professions, medical assistant, sniper, machine gunner, commander of an anti-aircraft gun, sapper, and now they are accountants, lab technicians, museum guides, teachers. Discrepancy of the roles here and there. Their memories are as if not about themselves, but some other girls. Now they are surprised at themselves. Before my eyes, history humanizes itself, becomes like ordinary life, acquires a different lighting. I've happened upon extraordinary storytellers. There are pages in their lives that can rival the best pages of the classics. The person sees herself so clearly from above, from heaven, and from below, from the ground. Before her is the whole path, up and down, from angel to beast. Remembering is not a passionate or dispassionate retelling of a reality that is no more, but a new birth of the past, when time goes in reverse. Above all, it is creativity. As they narrate, people create. They write their life. Sometimes they also write up or rewrite. Here you have to be vigilant, on your guard. At the same time, pain melts and destroys any falsehood. The temperature is too high. Nurses, cooks, laundresses behave more sincerely. I became convinced of that. They, how shall I put it exactly, draw the words out of themselves. and not from newspapers and books they have read, not from others, but only from their own sufferings and experiences. The feelings and language of educated people, strange as it may be, are often more subject to the working of time, its general encrypting. They are infected by secondary knowledge, by myths. Often I have to go for a long time by various roundabout ways in order to hear a story of a woman's, not a man's war, not about how we retreated, how we advanced, at which sector of the front. It takes not one meeting, but many sessions, like a persistent portrait painter. I sit for a long time, sometimes a whole day, in an unknown house or apartment. We drink tea, try on the recently bought blouses, discuss hairstyles and recipes, look at the photos of the grandchildren together. And then, after a certain time, you never know when or why, suddenly this long-awaited moment when this person departs from the canon, plaster and reinforced concrete, like our monuments, and goes on to herself, into herself, begins to remember not the war, but her youth, a piece of her life. I must seize that moment, not miss it. But often after a long day filled with words, facts, tears, only one phrase remains in my memory. I was so young when I left for the front. I even grew during the war. I keep it in my notebook, although I have dozens of yards of tape in my tape recorder. Texts everywhere. In city apartments and village cottages, in the streets and on the train, I listen. I turn more and more into a big ear, listening all the time to the other person. I read voices. We all would love to be Svetlana. I couldn't live her life. I couldn't live in Belarus. So I moved to New York City. Not the most glamorous photo, I hope you don't mind. This is Jamaica, Queens. I ended up in New York with a task to write about the city. Just, sum it up. Good luck with that, said my publisher. Because of my fierce and loyal editor, I had time. Time like the time that Svetlana Alexievich describes in that passage. The kind of time Ronald Blythe, over the years he walked the country lanes of Suffolk, listening patiently to his contemporaries. Time allows for the incremental process of trust. And if we accept the idea that we live in a polarized era, time is necessary in the journey to both sides, to all sides outside of our own. And I think of all the time I spent in New York, incrementally covering that distance, reaching towards others, trying to build trust. Our tour would have been horrified or jealous. I recently checked an old day planner. Pizza at the youth club, pizza at the safe injection site, coffee with retired NYPD officers, pizza with the trans activist group, 4 visits before I was asked to stay for a full session, coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, donuts at Dunkin' Donuts, a potluck in Queens. I was asked to attend an interviewee's birthday, his daughter's birthday, his mother's funeral, his second marriage ceremony. This is not meant to be just a list of how many carbs I had to eat during the process. As Alexievich would say, there's no other alternative. Sit with people. My hope was to gain some of the richness of New York, but you can't meet a New Yorker and say half an hour later, how about it? You want to tell me your hopes and dreams? They might tell you something, but probably not what you're looking for. Our tour could write about sports this way. People are different. The process is one of consent. The process is one of ethical considerations I didn't have time for in other forms of journalism. After the interviews, I had to ensure I was bringing a voice into the world, into my book, in the right way. It's a necessary, lengthy process. And though I didn't go as far as novelist Haruki Murakami did in his book, Underground, I worked with consent forms and worked to find a way individuals could present themselves in a way that was satisfactory to them. Murakami wrote an oral history years ago, back in 1997, called Underground, about the sarin gas attacks in the Tokyo subway. His approach illustrated the artistic pain but ultimate satisfaction that comes from working this way. This is from his intro to the book. In the process of shaping the written interviews, drafts were sent to the respective interviewees for fact-checking. I attached a note asking them to let me know if there was anything they didn't wish to see in print and how the contents should be altered or abridged. Almost everyone asked for some changes or cuts, and I complied. Often the forfeited material had illuminated details about the interviewees' lives, which I, as a writer, was sorry to lose. Occasionally, I came back with a counter proposal for them to approve. Some interviewees went back and forth as many as 5 times. Every effort was made to avoid any exploitative mass media scenario that might leave disgruntled interviewees shaking their heads saying, "It wasn't supposed to be like this," or "You betrayed my trust." Things took time. In the end, New Yorkers, my book features monologues from nearly 80 residents, including Black Lives Matter protesters and an Occupy Wall Street veteran, as well as 9/11 responders. When COVID erupted, I spent months speaking to nurses and survivors, and I'm still in conversation with them. You never leave a New York project behind. I seem to have this thing for going into cities, wandering about and hoping for the best. Perhaps you've at some point felt this way too. You've gone to a city and looked around at the people running it, populating it, feeding off its energy, getting transformed by it, playing out their dreams on its stage. Maybe you've seen it in places like Vancouver, or maybe you've seen it in New York, if you've been there, if you've visited, if you've been lucky enough to live there. You know it's the place people strive to get to. And when you're there surrounded by that humanity, you might think, who's the person who does that? Who's the person who keeps the Empire State lit? Who's making these elevators run? Who's making their mark on the city, protesting in its streets? Why is that person dancing on the subway? Why do people choose this place, give up so much to be there? What does living in its thrall do to a person? I got to know a lot of New Yorkers. I'd take off each morning from my little apartment on Grand Street and take the subway out to Queens to ride in the minivan of a personal injury lawyer. I'd head out to a used car lot in the Rockaways. I'd follow around a long-term care nurse. I marched in the Macy's Day Parade, stood atop an elevator, and rode in the dark. I got to listen to New Yorkers, their hopes, dreams, aspirations, their love for the city, their frustrations. Some of this is particular to New York, where is the greatest bagel after all? But much of what I spoke to them about, much of the conversation spoke to deeper themes: how to live a good life, how to live life with compassion. All of it took time. I'd like to finish with part of the book. This is the voice of a guy named Michael dos Santos. He appears at the end. I can't tell you how much I loved tracking down these people. And I can't tell you how much of terrible American coffee I drank while listening to them all. They're still out there. They're still fixing those elevators. They're still recycling cans. I liked it when these New Yorkers described other New Yorkers, especially descriptions of the animating force inside some of them that rarely dims. That said, here's Michael. I've been singing since I was 14. I was in school and I won a talent contest. I was in India at the time, and this big band asked me if I would sing. So I started singing. I've been singing since. But then when I came to New York, things were not really as you expect them to be. So I stopped singing for a very long time. And then when I settled and I was back on my feet again, I decided maybe I should sing, at least in the nursing homes. That's how I started singing in New York. Now I've been in the nursing homes for 15 years. Then, people come to the nursing home and then they say, oh, we go to this restaurant. They have entertainment. Why don't you come? And that's how it started. My mother's a singer. She used to be the Ella Fitzgerald of India once upon a time. She's got that deep, husky kind of voice. When I was a little boy, I used to go and see her singing. So I know all the songs from then, The Man I Love, Embraceable You, this kind of stuff she would do. At that time in Bombay, Western music was a big thing in hotels. Every hotel had a band. But now I think it's changed. I haven't been back in too long. Anyway, that's how I started. I used to work in this bagel place, 16 hours, sleep 8 hours, 16 hours, sleep 8 hours, 16 hours, sleep 8 hours. So there was no such thing as entertainment or anything because I was trying to save up, just work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep. I used to bake all night. And then I used to work at the register in the day and then go home, sleep 8 hours, come back again. Everybody kept saying, you should buy, don't rent, don't rent, don't rent. So I was set on buying an apartment. You meet a lot of people in New York that are willing to tell you what to do and how to do it, My mother made friends with this Italian woman that lived in Flushing, and her father was in a nursing home. She said, we have entertainers coming to the nursing home. You can at least sing in the nursing home. That's how it started. I wore a suit, just a regular suit. It was in the afternoon and I was accepted almost instantly. It's kind of nice because for Grandparents' Day and for Father's Day and for Mother's Day, they ask the patients, who do you want? And all the time we want Michael. I was there last night. I'm there the last Sunday of every month. I just take them back in time. I'm sure they must remember where they were when the song played, what they did. A lot of people say I sound like Elvis Presley. If I sang an Elvis song, they would say, wow, you sound just like him, but I don't think so. I've never tried to imitate. I won't even sing the arrangement they sing. I will just try to do it the way I want to sing it. My mother still comes with me and sings with me. She still comes and always pulls the house down. She has an exceptional voice. She's 80, but you would never say she's a day past 50. She's got this energy and this drive that I hope I have when I'm her age. At the restaurant, most of the people that come back are regulars. They tell them and they tell them and they tell. That's why I'm not on the internet. I'm nowhere. I'm all word of mouth. My whole crowd is word of mouth. I can call people and say, oh, I'm going to be at this place. And I know 60 to 100 people will show up, which is cool. Now I sing at this hospice on Roosevelt Island. Nobody comes to see them. Some of them are 100 years old. Nobody. I go and I sing happy birthday. And it's sad. Can you imagine you live your whole life and end up with nothing? In fact, when I first sang at this hospice in Roosevelt Island for 3 days, I was just so depressed. I couldn't stop thinking of it because they were all in there. They couldn't even get up. They were all wheeled in their beds into the room. The hospice is very depressing. Then I was singing and I could see them. While they were laying down and listening, their fingers would move and they would smile. So there was a connection. I made a connection, but I was so depressed when I saw them. I said, I can't do this. But then I thought to myself, maybe I could bring them some joy. You're told what to eat. You're told when to go down. You're told when to go up. You're told when to sleep. And nobody really has time for them. I have so many friends who think I'm crazy. If it's a beautiful Sunday afternoon, they'll say, what's wrong with you? Let's go here. Let's go there. But I know I'd rather go to the nursing home. I like to make people happy. I go there at 2 o'clock, but at 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm told they're all dressed and waiting downstairs. Someone tells them, Michael's coming today. Michael's coming today. Michael's coming today. No money could buy that. I saw Frank Sinatra live. Oh, he was great. I mean, he wasn't up to par because it was his last concert at Madison Square Garden and he was drunk. He was forgetting the words. He was just like muttering stuff, but it was Frank Sinatra. Madison Square Garden, his last concert, he was singing New York, New York, and he was like, blah, blah, blah. That's what he was doing. You could see the teleprompter with the words going up, the words of the songs. It was disappointing. But he was with his cigarette and his glass, and it was Frank Sinatra and sold out, $250 a ticket. That was the last time he ever sang New York, New York. That was it. My Way, he was mumbling, losing it between that and the whiskey. I like Liza Minnelli's version. Liza Minnelli's version, the best of all. I love her singing, New York, New York. She puts so much emotion into New York. But I think I do a pretty good job because I love New York. It's like I'm singing about her. I sing it at the nursing homes. Everybody wakes up. Everybody wakes up. And then when I'm leaving, it's like a garden and I've just sprayed water and all the flowers have come up. And they love singing along to My Way. Even though I don't really like to sing that song in the nursing home because it's like the end is near, but they love it. What can you do? I almost feel guilty, just singing the end is near to a bunch of people for whom the end is near. Some of them are bedridden. Some of them are hooked up to IV. Some of them are in wheelchairs. Some of them are just lost. But when My Way comes, they all remember. And I keep saying, I must not sing this in the nursing home. I must not sing this, but they'll ask for it. It's like they know that that's going to be the last song. If I don't sing that song, they don't know I'm done. The last song is always my way. And they put all their energy in. Yeah, it's sad. We're in a wheelchair, but we still did it our way. They're feisty, some of them, even at this age. That's the one thing. I don't think they say die till they're dead. In New York, they keep going. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. Fantastic. Next up is Dr. Sonnet La Bay. Sonnet has a number of chevrons on her sleeve. She has won the Malahat Review's Long Poem Prize, the Bronwyn Wallace Award, the B.P. Nicol Award. She was shortlisted for the Dorothy Livesay Prize. Her most recent book of poems is called Sonnets Shakespeare, in which she decolonizes and reclaims all of Shakespeare's sonnets through erasure and invention. And of that book, Shalene Knight has said, to embody an experience, to retell histories, to open doors and windows, Sonnet La Bay's Sonnets Shakespeare is the key. More recently, Sonnet has been exploring song and has also, for me anyway, taken the old idea of the troubadour in a very new, very contemporary direction. Please welcome Sonnet La Bay.
Hi, everybody. Asia Masiai Achomach Mistimach and the Pe Sonnet La Bay. Hi, my name's Sonnet. And so the title of the talk that the part of the talk that I'm going to give is about story and place. And like Jay said, I've been writing books of poems, and lately I've been thinking a lot about what does a poet even do, and who do they speak to, what audiences do they speak to, and how can I continue to do the poetry thing in a way that seems to make sense in this time and place. So I'll start actually with a poem, and I had a whole like kind of fancy theoretical way of saying why I do what I do, but I think it's hopefully will be more illustrative just to give you a sense of where I've come from and some of the writing that I've done around being in a place, and then move into some of the songs. So this is the second poem from Sonnets Shakespeare. It's 154 poems. It took 7 years to write. So this was when I was living in Kelowna. When I stop for a moment to think seriously about the fractaled winters and my shallow gulp of the besieged oceans, a sulfuric froth rises on my brow. Sand sits in the digger's deep yellow claw. Pipeline trenches its gleaming mathy beauty into the Athabascan fields. If I call the country boys uncouth, they'll just be proud. If I say live and let live, they want their country. I feel so gazed on in Kelowna, so welcome if I stay invisible. My lovability here is a tattered thing I incense with weed. Reminders of my small worth lodge their smell in my body. The mountain befriends me from across the highway. It asks why I live in my head. I ask to go where all this crazy beauty lives without erasing the erasure of brown people. In its silence, the mountain relates the erasure of its name, then laughs a wry laugh at the exclusive community with its cul-de-sacs and driveways carved into its back. Why worry, sang Dire Straits. There should be sunshine after rain. These things have always been the same. So why put on deep sunken eyes for the ways of the real world? If an all-you-can-eat wing night isn't enough affirmation of your culture, maybe you're not our kind, say the rifle and pistol dudes. They sport at getting dressed in historic Western costume and acting out childhood fantasies from old movies using real ammo and the typical firearms Chisholm used to tame the Old West. My reservations, readable as a dot on my forehead. In cowboy land, beauty is an unbroken horse, untrained for bit and bridle. It's a breathtaking mountain as backdrop to agricultural Christian goods. Sonnet, answer this. Why is fair trade even a thing? No child of mine is ugly, my mother used to say to marshal my spirits. Bummer, my account of the Okanagan, Albertan dreamland, lake country. My colored opinions inexcusable. Improving on this beauty is impossible, except maybe if my sucky intercessions weren't here to hinder its ahistorical warm-heartedness. I feel the irritation of my being on Western women who are already so tolerant. But when I think about the warming winters and the brown field of the ocean, my validity seems worth saying. It is our forgotten blood, warming where the uncouth country boys feel the state they built could be yellow. Okay, I cannot see you at all. I see vague, like I see blackness and some vague shapes. How many of you know, just shout it, know what Tetuchten is? Oh, thank you. Tetuchten? No. Okay, great. How about Wakasaya? We know the street. Okay. No. Okay. Well, how about Qualasalwood? Okay. So part of what I'm like really interested in doing lately is just storying places, just doing what I do, not just here at the university, but come and catch me at open mic at the Nanaimo bar on Monday nights. You can see me do my shit with like these songs mixed in with covers. Or come and see me at the art gallery on the 18th, where I will sing some covers and these songs. I want to take my work to the people, right? And there are the people here in this somewhat rarefied space. And then there are, there's space for thinking nation, thinking identity, thinking decoloniality at the Nanaimo bar. So I'm really interested in that. So this song is about, you heard me talk to the mountain in Kelowna. I did live across the street from I could look out my window and see a mountain. And here I have the same situation. I live facing what many people call Mount Benson, and what was known in the Chinook language, so a trader kind of combined language, which meant far away in that language. And then Tetuchten is the Hulkaminum name for that mountain, Tetuchten. And so I'm just going to say it at you a lot so that you know it. And then Qualasalwood, if you up by the library, there's that small totem, Qualasalwood Garden. So that Qualasalwood is Ellen White, who won the Order of Canada and is the great grandmother of Elliot Hill White, who's named in this song too, Qualasalton. And Qualasalton, Elliot Whitehill, talked to me a lot about whether or not I had the right, well, not the right, but who I am to sing this song. I guess it's a song about my poetics in a way. So here I sit in my little room, trying to find the vibes to heal my othered heart. I sigh and look outside at your high horizon, thinking of my neighbor who pulls his kids in when I step outside. Oh, next door mountain, how do I come here to your feet? How am I at your feet and sing in your name? I see a mountain, I'm a storyteller too, surviving in a skin some call dark in the ivory tower. I'm trying to find the vibes to undo the holy harm my human body carries from my histories into open arms. Next door mountain, who am I to sing your name? Who am I to sing your name in my trying to belong? Colossal ten standing by the river said, Colossal what told him. A story lives each time we tell the tale or sing the song. Colossal what standing by the river said, Colossal what told her. A story lives each time we tell the tale or sing the song. They're tearing down the statues of Jimmy Cook and Johnny Mac down in that town they named for a British queen. And they say that Wakasaya means far away in a language not born here or there, but somewhere in between. Oh, Tetuchten, can you tell me our relation? Who am I to sing your name? Who am I to sing your name in my unsettled song? Colossal ten standing by the river said, Colossal what told him. A story lives each time we tell the tale or sing the song. Colossal what standing by the river said, Colossal ten told her. A story lives each time we sing the song or tell the tale. Oh, Tetuchten, next door mountain, who am I to sing your name? Who am I to sing your name in my trying to belong? Oh, Tetuchten, can you tell me our relation? Who am I to sing your name? Who am I to sing your name in my unsettled song? In my unsettled song, in my unsettler song. Thanks. So, okay, so there's a song for you about this place. Yay! And the Nanaimo Art Gallery has been doing does a lot of like work very locally based. And this summer they did a project where they invited a number of artists, local artists and artists from elsewhere too, to come and engage with the Millstone River, what's known as the Millstone River here in town. Everybody know that space? Have any of you walked along it and seen the little concrete thing? There's some concrete business going on. Do you know what that is? There's like concrete flue things. Anyway, there's well, when we went out to do the walk for the gallery, where they were like, come and do something about the river. I was like, what is that? It's the fish ladder. Does everybody know what a fish ladder is? Okay, so okay, cool. All right, cool. So as part of this engagement, the project was called Riverbed, and in Hulkaminam was Haliata Stalo, which means just living by the river. The gallery had a whole bunch of archives, digital archives for us to look at about the history of the river and how industrialism and all the mills impacted the landscape around the delta and impacted the ecosystem. And in it was a letter from 1974 asking for some money for that fish ladder. And I made a song out of it with all the eco stuff, not just like straight rah fish ladder. Just let us think about what this meant. Oh, no, I'll come to that later. Okay. Here we go. Dear sir, if you please, let me tell you about a pretty little river where the steelhead trout and the coho salmon in springtime like to spawn. It runs through the middle of the harbor city, and given all its gravel, you'd think it would be pretty full of pink fresh fish. But sir, that's why I'm writing this letter. Let's build a fish ladder so the fish can run upstream. Let's build a fish ladder so the fish can do what they do. So the fish can swim up through the Millstone stream. There's a big slab of rock in Barsby Park and a set of waterfalls in Bowen that block the frisky fish from getting where they need to go to get it on. So we drew up a budget to bulldoze a road and blow 9 holes in the slab of stone. We'll need some explosive, a backhoe, a truck, some men at $4 an hour. Let's build a fish ladder so the fish can run upstream. Let's build a fish ladder so the fish can do what they do. So the fish can swim up through the Millstone stream. So now you've heard my little Raffiesque tune. You know the lyrics, the complicated lyrics? Let's build a fish ladder so the fish can run upstream. Let's build a fish ladder so the fish can do what they do. So the fish can run up through the Millstone stream. Yeah, look, it's the morning, right? Say ah. Okay, when the time comes, feel free to sing along. Thanks for your attention, I'm sure you'll agree with Nanaimo Parks and Rec and BC Fisheries that our proposal for a fishway is a sound intervention. Of course, the fishermen will love it, but it's also good for kids to see some spawning in their neighborhood. It will be good for the fish and good for the community. Okay, let's build a fish ladder, yay, so the fish can run upstream. Let's build a fish ladder so the fish can do what they do. So the fish can swim up through the Millstone stream. Very good, yeah. So the fish can do what they do. So the fish can swim up through the Millstone I really like to sing that one at the Quarterway pub. And cause like people will sing along at the Quarterway too. There's like the big screens, there's football players happening in the background. Excellent, I love it. Okay, some of you may have heard this song before. City of Nanaimo was doing a thing back in 2020. Pandemic had already happened, had it? No, yes, I don't remember. Oh, it's a blur. Asking about the future of Nanaimo and asked me as an artist to contribute. And at that point, I was like, still being like, asking permission to write songs at that point. And they said, okay. So yeah, I wrote this. Old friend, it's so good to hear from you and to hear you might take a job here on the Mid-Island, doing taxes and filing reports on the prices of logs. You've been thinking of making a move for a while and leaving that big city life. Now you're asking me, am I happy here? And if in Nanaimo a black girl can thrive, Nazanin, you're wondering, should you move to Nanaimo? You heard it's a proud redneck town, and you want to know, will your boys be okay in the schools, and are there that many black people around? Girl, the real estate used to be great, and the air is amazing, even when it smells like the mill. And of course there are the mountains, the mild winters and summers on ocean and cedar-lined trails. The people are kind, but you cannot find a good jerk chicken to save your life. And when I went to the Queens for the reggae scene, all of the dreadlock rastas were white. But I've been okay here. I fell in love with a redneck or two, but I have been cussed out and someone egged my house. But what are you gonna do, Nazanin? You're wondering, should you move to Nanaimo? Well, I for one could use you here, 'cause the world is on fire, and when people get tired, they need to share laughter and loving and tears. Nazanin, this ain't Toronto. Nazanin, it ain't Calgary. Nazanin, it ain't even Nanaimo. If you're speaking Hulkamino, it's still a small town in its self-protection, a colonial vibe at its heart. But we had a BLM rally down at Swilana, so that's a hopeful start. We listen to voices, a black teen speaking out against end jokes and bullying. I found some fam at the Sunday Blues Jam who know why the blackbird sings. Nazanin, not gonna lie, girls like us here are few and far between. But maybe with 20/20 vision, Nanaimo will see itself different. Nazanin. So Nazanin, I hope you do it. I hope you move to Nanaimo. Oh, bring your beautiful black boys. I will wear a mask to pick you up from the ferry. I'll be so overjoyed to see you in Nanaimo, Nazanin. Thanks. I guess that answers my question about whether or not the pandemic had happened. Mask line. All right. This is a bit of, because this one's about Nanaimo and we're thinking about storing place, and here we are together in this place. In the moment after 49 was elected, the orange one was elected a few years back. I remember that. I remember all the global protests around with the pink hats that looked like cats. Yes? Yes. Okay. Thank you for vocalizing that, because I still can't see. All right. So there was a one of those here in Nanaimo, and I helped put that together. And this poem is about that, because I did not know anything about organizing anything. I just kind of was like, woke up and was like, how am I going to live? How am I going to live if this city doesn't have a thing? Yeah. I Googled protest, march, successful, Nanaimo to start. Not much there, but a demo against Harper's omnibus bill agenda over 4 years before that had attracted a few hundred like minds. I called the name on the internet for help. Though I was a complete stranger to Bill Eadie, humanely he spent a slow hour giving me the insider to Nanaimo organizational 411 over the phone. How hard could it be to plan a march? We had all of 2 weeks. But I'm a solitary person. When I demonstrate, it's in literature my passion finds comrades. Can't I be in undies with the comforter warm over my thighs while plotting the rhetorical moves of decolonial love? Nope. It's impossible alone to be a movement. The National Girls fixed up a march page on Facebook that looked profesh. I downloaded templates for posters. And I sent an email to university folk, hoping for takers. Stand with women in Washington? Please help. Susan, Kate, and Kathy Rose. Kathleen, Eliza, and Janice Rose. Every woman's deserving of basic respect, said knitters, whose needles were the industry, plunked pink knit toques on women all over the world. The pussy grabbers' hoggish hubris had roused a sense of right not to be taken down without love's fight. Nanaimo's a forestry town with miners' foundations, box malls, and a quaint harbor. The girls have rosy lips and cheeks from walking the hiking paths. Wives bend in yoga classes, rock chicks show tat sleeves at local boys' jams. I played shitty acoustic guitar at the open mic so that I could tell the collective about our apolitical gathering. Susan got wicked shirts, Kathleen did tech, Janice's boyfriend fashioned fonts. Bill rustled permits, Kate wangled food, Kathy wrote press kits, Eliza brought amps. I was responsible for leadership curation, for whose truth was the event. Eleanor spoke the lead, gave thanks to Creator. Rose's friends, old school marchers, lifted their voices, beat their drums, offering women's songs. Defiant, under the pavilion called Maffeo Sutton, proud Valine fucked shit up. We listened to the voice of growing resistance. 1,000 marched in Nanaimo. We marched as one movement, as the world's women moved. Thanks. Okay, so then this last piece is also written for the Nanaimo Art Gallery's project, Hali Atastalo. And let's see. What did I want to say about this? Well, ditch the script. One one of the events that, that the gallery put on was a plant walk with Nancy Turner and Auntie Geraldine Manson, Cetacea Geraldine Manson. And they told us about the native species around the Millstone River. And I'm also thinking about an experience that I had here fairly recently, where there was a lot of acknowledgement of the Snuneymuxw territory that we are on. And at the same time, there was this big invitation to sing along to Stan Rogers's Northwest Passage, and which has been called the alternative Canadian national anthem. And it made me so deeply uncomfortable, because there are lines in Stan Rogers's Northwest Passage that really do like kind of reinforce a narrative of like this land was uninhabited and savage and like very terra nullius. And it just landed on me like doing a lot of like #MeToo and then going and singing like Baby It's Cold Outside. I can't hear Baby It's Cold Outside anymore. I mean, I know that it's of a time and place, but I wouldn't invite people to sing along to it anymore. And so I just want to think about that kind of political work of singing these well-loved but historical songs that when they're lived in the body and asked to be like raw and get the energy flowing through you, flowing through an audience, and all of the work that it is to get sound and energy to flow through a body to retell the story, because the story is retold each time we tell the tale or sing this song. That we really think about what we're doing. So this is what I wrote coming out of that that plant walk. Elise asks the elders about invasive species. She's wondering what we should do. Elise asks the elders about invasive species. She's wondering what we should do. What should we do about the Scotch broom that yellows the meadows and roadsides? How should we treat English holly and English ivy with its ever-spreading vines? Unless you uproot them, they'll choke the ecosystem, the ethnobotanist replies. Unless you uproot them, they'll choke the ecosystem, the ethnobotanist replies. What should we do about the Scotch broom that yellows the meadows and roadsides? How should we treat English holly and English ivy with its ever-spreading vines? Native plants and trees need strong protection or the tender balance dies. Native plants and trees need strong protection or the tender balance dies. Oh, what should we do about the Scotch broom that yellows the meadows and hydro corridors? How should we treat Himalayan blackberry that trades its sweet fruit for control of countryside? Can't get rid of all of it, says Cetacea. You can't just blitz the land. Can't just tear out everything without hurting the other plants you've got to go in by hand. You can't just tear out all of it, says Cetacea. You can't just blitz the land. You can't just tear out everything without hurting the other plants. You've got to go in by hand, and that takes time. 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 Elise asks the elders about invasive species. She's wondering what we should do. Thank you. That's it for me.